Welcome to Red-Handed Crimes Channel. Don't forget to subscribe. The harsh fluorescent lights of the bustling international airport reflected off the polished floors as passengers hurried past, eager to catch their flights. Among them was a woman dressed in an unassuming beige trench coat, a modest handbag slung over her shoulder. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, and her expression remained calm, too calm, perhaps. But calmness didn't matter to the airport security officer scrutinizing her. His suspicious gaze flickered between her passport and her face, his fingers tightening around the document. He gave her a curt nod before signaling two other officers. In an instant, the woman was ushered out of line, her belongings seized. Passers-by stole curious glances, some whispering under their breath. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," one officer said sternly. She hesitated for just a second before nodding, knowing resistance would only escalate the situation. Little did they know, the woman they were humiliating was someone far beyond their comprehension. In the moment they realized who she truly was, the ground beneath them would shake. For the past decade, mysterious whispers had surrounded an underground criminal network operating across multiple countries. Authorities had tried and failed to infiltrate the group, as those who dared to speak about it often vanished without a trace. The mastermind behind it all was rumored to be a ghost, slipping through borders undetected, a phantom no intelligence agency could catch. And now, the woman standing in the airport security checkpoint, stripped of her dignity, was at the center of it all. But she wasn't the criminal. She was the key witness, the one who could bring down an entire empire of corruption. Security led her into a stark, windowless room. A single metal chair sat in the middle, accompanied by a matching table. They made her wait, drawing out the discomfort. Finally, a middle-aged officer entered, his face set in a hard line. "Tell us why you're here." The woman lifted her gaze, her eyes unreadable. "You don't know who I am, do you?" The officer scoffed. "You are acting suspicious. We have reason to believe you're carrying something illegal." "I am," she admitted, reaching for her coat pocket. Instantly, the officers flinched, hands on their holsters. But what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a flash drive. "This," she said, placing it on the table, "is the reason I'm being followed. And if you don't listen to me now, it might be the last mistake you ever make." Skepticism danced in the officer's eyes, but something in her voice made him hesitate. He snatched the flash drive and inserted it into his laptop. What he saw turned his face pale. Names. Faces. Accounts. High-ranking officials in multiple countries linked to human trafficking, weapons smuggling, and unspeakable crimes. A secret operation hidden in plain sight. And the woman before him? She wasn't a criminal. She was a government informant who had spent years undercover. And now, her life was in danger. The officer stiffened. "Who else knows about this?" Her voice was steady. "Not enough people. But now you do." Before the officer could respond, an alarm blared through the airport. Security personnel rushed outside, and through the one-way mirror, the woman watched as chaos erupted. A black van screeched to a halt just beyond the terminal doors. Armed men poured out, scanning the crowd. They were here for her. The officer's instincts kicked in. He turned to his team. "Get her out of here. Now." But it was too late. The doors burst open. Gunfire erupted. And the woman who held the key to everything found herself in the crosshairs of the very people she had spent years trying to expose. What followed was a race against time, a desperate attempt to smuggle the woman to safety as the walls closed in. And as the airport became a battlefield, the security officers who had humiliated her just moments ago realized the truth. They had nearly cost an innocent woman her life. But more than that, they had almost lost the only chance they had to bring justice to the world. Would she escape? Would the truth ever come to light? Or would the darkness consume her before anyone could ever hear her story? The room was silent except for the rhythmic tapping of Agent Caldwell's fingers against the metal table. The woman sat across from him, her face unreadable. No fear, no outrage, just an unsettling calm. He had interrogated hundreds of people in his career, but something about her felt different. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice measured, almost amused. Caldwell didn't flinch. "Let's start with your name." The woman tilted her head slightly. "You already know it." He exhaled sharply, leaning forward. "We ran your fingerprints. There's no match. No record. It's like you don't exist." A small, knowing smile played on her lips. "Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Psychological warfare." She wasn't panicking, she was controlling the situation. That sent a shiver down his spine. Meanwhile, outside the interrogation room, chaos brewed. Homeland Security had flagged the incident. An anonymous call had been made just hours before her flight, warning of a high-risk individual boarding with falsified credentials. Yet, there was no trace of the caller. The airport log showed no suspicious transactions, except for one, a deleted security feed from 3:17 a.m., precisely when the woman had entered the terminal. The lead analyst, a young officer named Ruiz, wiped his brow as he worked to restore the footage. It wasn't just erased, it was overridden by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. And when the footage finally resurfaced, his breath hitched. The woman was not alone. A man, tall, wearing a hood, walked just steps behind her. And then, in a single frame, their eyes met the camera. The man's face, though partially shadowed, was unmistakable. "Sir," Ruiz called out, his voice tight. "You're gonna want to see this." Back inside the interrogation room, Caldwell slid a printout across the table. The blurred image of the man in the hoodie. "Who is he?" The woman barely glanced at the photo. "A ghost." Caldwell's grip on the table tightened. "His name is Damian Cross. Ex-intelligence. Disappeared 3 years ago after a classified operation went south. If you're working with him." She leaned in, cutting him off. "You're asking the wrong questions, Agent." Silence stretched between them. Caldwell felt the weight of the moment, the eerie sensation that he was being played. She wanted him to ask something else, but what? Then, as if she had decided he was finally ready, she whispered, "You should be asking, why did they want me here?" Caldwell's blood ran cold. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't about her. This was a trap. And he had just walked straight into it. Caldwell's heart pounded as he stared at the empty chair. He stepped forward cautiously, the weight of his footsteps amplified in the dead silence of the interrogation room. The note sat in the center of the steel table, its presence almost mocking. "Now we're even." His hands trembled as he picked it up. The paper was ice cold, as if it had been sitting in a freezer. He turned it over. There was something written on the back in red ink. "Check your pocket." A chill ran down his spine. Slowly, hesitantly, he slipped his hand into his jacket pocket. His fingers closed around something small, metallic, something that hadn't been there before. He pulled it out. A USB drive. Caldwell's stomach twisted into knots. His mind screamed that this was impossible. She had been searched. The room was sealed. There was no way she could have slipped something into his pocket without him noticing. And yet, here it was. He swallowed hard and stormed out of the room. He had minutes before this entire situation spiraled beyond his control. He rushed down the sterile, dimly lit corridor, his mind racing through possibilities. The woman wasn't normal. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. This was a setup. And the worst part? He had no idea if he was the predator or the prey. Caldwell locked himself in his office and jammed the USB into his secured laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. A single file appeared on the screen. His pulse hammered in his ears. He clicked on it. The screen flickered. Static. Then, footage. Surveillance footage. His interrogation room. His own face. It was from earlier, just moments ago. It showed him sitting across from her. But as he watched, something changed. The footage distorted for a second, then. She wasn't there anymore. It was just him, alone. Talking to nobody. Caldwell's blood turned to ice. He scrubbed through the footage. There had to be a mistake. Had to be a glitch. But every frame showed the same thing. He was sitting there, questioning thin air. The woman had never been there. A fresh wave of panic surged through him. He ripped out the USB, shoving his chair back so hard it crashed against the wall. His breaths were sharp, uneven. His office phone rang. A sharp, shrill sound that nearly stopped his heart. He stared at it. It never rang unless it was an emergency. Slowly, he picked it up. Agent Caldwell. The line crackled. Then, a voice. Her voice. You should have left it alone. Click. Silence. Caldwell's grip on the phone tightened. He turned, his gaze darting to the security camera in the corner of his office. A red light blinked. It had never blinked before. He wasn't watching. To be continued. He was being watched. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.